What if the man you called dad your entire life had stolen your mother's happiness? What if she could have had a different life, a different love, a different story? I'm 68 years old, and I just found out my mother lived her whole life not knowing someone loved her because my father hid the letters. Before I tell you what I discovered in those walls, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And if this story makes you question everything you thought you knew about your own parents, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that will break your heart and make you think. My name is Catherine Walsh, and I'm 68 years old. This story begins with a sledgehammer and ends with a truth that changed everything I believed about my family. My mother, Margaret Walsh, died 3 years ago at the age of 8. She lived what I thought was a good life, a long life, a stable life, the kind of life women of her generation were supposed to want. She married my father, Thomas Walsh, in 1957. Well, she had to marry him in 1957 because I was already on the way. I was born in December 1957, exactly 6 months after their wedding. As a child, I didn't understand the significance of that timeline. As a teenager, I did the math and realized I was the reason they got married. My mother never spoke about it directly, but I understood the implication. I was a mistake that had to be corrected with a hasty marriage. My father was a good provider by the standards of his time. He worked at the Homestead Steel Mill in Pittsburgh for 43 years, from 1955 until his retirement in 1998. He was a foreman by the end, respected by his crew, known for being fair but strict. He brought home his paycheck every Friday. He paid the bills on time. He kept the roof over our heads and food on the table. He never drank excessively, never gambled, never ran around with other women. He attended Mass every Sunday. He fixed things around the house without being asked. By 1950 standards, by any standards really, he was a good husband and father, but he was never warm, never affectionate. I can count on one hand the number of times he hugged me growing up. He showed love through provision, not through emotion. He worked. He came home. He ate dinner in silence. He watched television. He went to bed. That was the rhythm of our household for my entire childhood. My mother was different. She had this quality about her, a wistfulness, a kind of sadness that lived in her eyes, even when she smiled. I noticed it as a child, though I didn't have the words to describe it then. She'd stand at the kitchen window washing dishes, and I'd see her staring out at nothing, her hands still in the sudsy water, lost in some thought she never shared. "Mom," I'd say, "Mom, the water's overflowing." She'd snap back to reality, turn off the tap, and give me a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Sorry, sweetheart, I was daydreaming." About what? Oh, nothing important, just silly things. She loved old love songs from the night. Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, Nat King Cole, Billie Holiday. She had a collection of records that she played on an old phonograph when Dad was at work. I'd come home from school and find her in the living room, ironing clothes or folding laundry, those songs filling the house with their melancholy melodies. Sometimes I'd catch her crying, not sobbing, just quiet tears rolling down her cheeks while Sinatra sang, "I'll Be Seeing You," or Billie Holiday sang "The Very Thought of You." "Why are you sad, Mom?" I'd ask, worried. "I'm not sad, sweetheart," she'd say, wiping her eyes quickly with the back of her hand. "These are happy tears. Sometimes beautiful things make you cry." I accepted that explanation as a child. I thought it was just how grown-ups were, complicated, emotional, in ways I didn't understand yet. Now looking back with the knowledge I have, I understand she was mourning something she'd lost, or rather something that had been stolen from her without her even knowing it existed. There was one other thing I remember vividly about my mother. She kept a photograph on her nightstand her entire life, a small black and white photo in a simple silver frame. It showed a young man in a Navy uniform, maybe 19 or 20 years old, with dark hair slicked back in the style of the 1950s, and kind eyes that seemed to look directly through the camera at whoever was taking the picture. He was smiling, a genuine smile that lit up his whole face. The photo was faded, the edges yellowed with age. When I was little, maybe 6 or 7 years old, I asked her about it. "Who's that man, Mommy?" "Just an old friend," she'd said softly, touching the frame gently with her fingertips, as if the photo were something precious and fragile. "From a long time ago. Where is he now?" "I don't know, sweetheart. We lost touch." "Why?" "Sometimes people drift apart. Life takes them in different directions." My father never commented on the photograph. It sat there on her nightstand for my entire childhood, through my teenage years, through my adulthood, through the decades of their marriage. When I got married and moved out, the photo remained. When I visited with my own children, the photo was still there. When my mother grew old and frail, that photo was one of the few things she kept close to her. I asked her about it one more time when I was in my 40s, and she was in her 70s. We were cleaning out a closet together, organizing old clothes to donate, and I saw her pause at the bedroom doorway, her eyes landing on that silver frame. "Mom," I said gently, "that man in the photograph, who was he really?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Someone I knew before your father, someone I cared about very much." "What happened to him?" "He left. He went away and never came back. And I married your father instead." There was such sadness in her voice, such profound regret, that I didn't push further. I could see it caused her pain to even speak about it, so I let it go. I assumed it was just an old flame, a first love that hadn't worked out, the kind of thing everyone has in their past. I never imagined that the man in that photograph had tried to reach her for 20 years, that he'd written to her every single week, pouring his heart out in letters she never received, that my father had systematically intercepted every one of those letters and hidden them where she would never find them. I never imagined that my father had, in effect, stolen my mother's entire life. My father died 5 years ago of a massive heart attack. He was 87 years old, still relatively healthy, still living independently in the same house he and my mother had shared for 60 years. He was working in the garden, planting tomatoes, when he collapsed. The neighbor found him an hour later. The doctor said he was probably dead before he hit the ground. A quick death, they assured me, no suffering. My mother took his death hard. They'd been married for 63 years. Despite the emotional distance I'd always sensed between them, despite the sadness in my mother's eyes, they'd built a life together. They'd raised me. They'd weathered decades of ups and downs, financial struggles, health scares, the ordinary challenges of a long marriage. She mourned him deeply. She lived for 3 more years without him. But she was never quite the same. She grew smaller, quieter, more fragile. The house felt too big for her. I visited twice a week, brought her groceries, helped her with things around the house. We'd sit in the living room and watch old movies together, or I'd read to her when her eyesight started to fail. She died in her sleep on a Tuesday morning in March, 3 years ago. Peaceful, the doctor said. Her heart just stopped. She was 89 years old. I found her that afternoon, when I came by for my usual visit. She looked serene, lying in her bed, the morning light streaming through the window. The photograph of the young man in the Navy uniform was on her nightstand, as it had been for over 60 years. I organized her funeral. I went through her things. I made the difficult decisions about what to keep, and what to donate, and what to throw away. The house itself, I couldn't deal with it immediately. It was too much, too overwhelming. So I locked it up and left it as it was, telling myself I'd handle it when I was ready. 3 years passed. The house sat empty, slowly deteriorating. The plumbing started to leak. The roof developed problems. The electrical system, installed in the 1940s, was becoming dangerous. My husband Robert finally sat me down 6 months ago and said, "Catherine, you need to do something about that house. Either fix it up and sell it, or tear it down, but you can't just leave it sitting there falling apart." He was right. I couldn't afford to maintain two houses, and the memories in that place, my childhood, my parents' long marriage, my mother's sad eyes staring out the window, were too heavy to live with. So I made the decision. I'd renovate it and sell it. I hired a contractor named Mike Rodriguez, who came highly recommended. He was in his 50s, professional, with a crew of good workers. We walked through the house together, and I explained what I wanted. The plumbing needed to be completely redone. The electrical system needed to be brought up to code. The kitchen and bathrooms were hopelessly outdated, and I wanted to reconfigure some of the layout specifically. I wanted to knock down the wall between my mother's small bedroom and the tiny storage closet next to it to create one larger master bedroom. "No problem," Mike said, making notes on his clipboard. "We can do all of that. It'll take about 3 months, maybe 4. The house has good bones. It just needs some love." The work began last month. Mike's crew started with demolition, pulling out the old kitchen cabinets, ripping up the ancient linoleum floors, tearing down walls. I stopped by every few days to check on progress. The transformation was dramatic. The house I'd grown up in was being gutted, stripped down to its skeleton, preparing to become something new. It was on a Thursday afternoon, about 3 weeks into the renovation, when Mike called me. "Mrs. Walsh, you need to come to the house right away." "Is something wrong? Is there structural damage?" "No, nothing like that. Just, you need to see this. I don't want to explain over the phone." His tone was serious, almost unsettled. I drove over immediately, my mind racing through possibilities. Had they found mold, asbestos, some kind of dangerous material in the walls? When I arrived, Mike was waiting for me in the driveway. His face was grave. "I need to show you something. We found it in your mother's bedroom, between the walls." We went upstairs. The bedroom had been completely demolished. The old wallpaper was gone, the plaster removed, the wall studs exposed. Mike's crew had knocked down the wall between the bedroom and the storage closet, just as I'd requested. The space was now open, filled with dust and debris. Mike led me to a specific spot where the wall had been. "We were pulling down the plaster right here," he said, pointing to a section of exposed studs. "And this fell out from between the walls." He handed me something wrapped in old, stained oilcloth. It was about the size of a shoebox, rectangular, surprisingly heavy. "What is it?" I asked. "I don't know. I didn't open it. It's not mine to open." "But Mrs. Walsh, it was hidden there deliberately. Someone put it between those walls and plastered over it. It's been there for decades." My hands were shaking as I took the bundle from him. The oilcloth was brittle with age, stained and musty smelling. I carefully unwrapped it, my heart pounding for reasons I couldn't explain. Inside were letters, hundreds of them, stacks and stacks of envelopes, all the same size, all yellowed with age, all addressed in the same handwriting. I picked up the top envelope. The address read, "Miss Margaret O'Brien, 24/7 Maple Street, Pittsburgh, PA. Margaret O'Brien, my mother's maiden name, my mother's childhood address, her parents' house." I looked at the return address, James Morrison, 1842, Chestnut Street, Philadelphia, PA. James Morrison. I'd never heard that name in my life. The postmark on the envelope was June 9. I shuffled through the stack. July 1960, September 1960. They continued chronologically. Some weeks there were 2 letters. The dates continued through the 1960s, through the 1970s, all the way to 1980. I counted them roughly. There had to be at least 200 letters, maybe more. 20 years of letters, all addressed to my mother, at her childhood home, all from the same man, all unopened. Mike, I said quietly, can you give me some privacy? Of course, he backed away. Take all the time you need. My crew's on lunch break anyway. We'll be back in an hour. I heard him leave, heard his footsteps on the stairs, heard the front door close. Then I was alone in the dusty, demolished bedroom, with a bundle of letters that had been hidden for over 40 years. I sat down on the floor, not caring about the dust and debris. My hands were trembling as I opened the first envelope. Dated June. The letter was written in neat, masculine handwriting, on thin paper that crackled as I unfolded it. My dearest Margaret, it began. I started reading, and with each word, the world I thought I knew began to crumble. My dearest Margaret, I know you told me not to write. I know you said it was over. But I can't accept that. I won't accept that. I got your letter saying you were marrying Thomas Walsh. I got the wedding announcement your mother sent. I saw the date, June 22nd, just 1 week from now. Margaret, you can't do this, not like this, not because of shame or fear, or what people will say. I love you. I have loved you since we were 16 years old. I will love you until the day I die. The baby you're carrying is mine, not his. You know it. I know it. And marrying him won't change that truth. Please, Margaret, I'm begging you, don't marry him. Run away with me. I have money saved. Not much, but enough. We can go to Maryland or New Jersey, somewhere your parents can't reach us. We'll get married. We'll raise our child together. I don't care about the scandal. I don't care what your parents say, or what the church says, or what anyone in that small-minded neighborhood says. I just care about you. I love you, Margaret. I've always loved you, and I know you love me too. What we have is real. What you're doing with Thomas Walsh is it's just cowardice. I'm sorry to say it so harshly, but it's true. You're taking the easy way out. You're choosing respectability over love. Please don't do it. Please, I'll wait for you at the train station on June 21st at 6 p.m. If you come, we'll leave together. If you don't come, I'll know you've made your choice, but I'll still write to you. I'll write to you every week until you answer, even if it takes forever, because you're worth waiting for. You're worth everything. Yours always, James. I stared at the letter, reading it twice, 3 times. The baby you're carrying is mine, not his. Thomas Walsh wasn't my biological father. This James Morrison was. My mother had been pregnant with another man's child when she married the man I'd called Dad my entire life. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. I set it down carefully and picked up the next letter, dated June 20. My dearest Margaret, you didn't come to the train station. I waited for 3 hours. I kept thinking you'd arrive at any moment, that you'd been delayed, that something had held you up, but you never came. I got the newspaper 2 days later. I saw the wedding announcement. Mr. and Mrs. Patrick O'Brien are pleased to announce the marriage of their daughter, Margaret Mary O'Brien, to Mr. Thomas Michael Walsh on June 22 at St. Patrick's Cathedral. I stared at that announcement for an hour. I kept hoping it was a mistake, that someone had submitted it prematurely, that it wasn't real, but it was real. You married him. You actually married him. I don't understand, Margaret. How could you do it? How could you marry a man you don't love while carrying my child? How could you choose him over me? I know you love me. I know you do. I saw it in your eyes. Every time we were together, I felt it in your touch. I heard it in your voice when you whispered my name. So why did you marry him? Was it your parents? Did they force you? Did they threaten you? Please write to me and explain. I need to understand. I need to know why you chose a life with him instead of a life with me. I'm not angry. I'm heartbroken. But I'm not angry. I just want to understand. Please, Margaret, just write to me once. Just tell me why. I'll wait for your letter. I'll wait as long as it takes. Yours always, James. I opened letter after letter. July 9, August 9. The tone shifted from heartbreak to desperation to resignation. By September 1960, the letters had changed. My dearest Margaret, I haven't heard from you. I've written to you every week since your wedding, and you haven't responded once. Maybe you're still angry with me. Maybe you blame me for everything that happened. Maybe you think I abandoned you. I didn't, Margaret. I never abandoned you. Your parents separated us. Your father threatened me. Your mother told me never to contact you again, but I'm contacting you anyway, because I can't not. I need you to know that I'm still here. I'm still in Philadelphia, still working at the Naval Shipyard. I'm living in a small apartment on Chestnut Street. It's nothing special, but it would have been enough for us. It could still be enough for us. I know you're married now. I know you have the baby. Our baby. A daughter I heard through mutual friends. Born in December. I imagine she has your dark hair and blue eyes. I imagine she has your smile. I wish I could meet her. I wish I could hold her and tell her I'm her father, but I know that's not possible. You've made your choice. You've chosen Thomas Walsh and the life he can give you. I understand why. He can provide stability, respectability, all the things your parents wanted for you, all the things I couldn't give you. But Margaret, I want you to know something. I would have given you love, real love, the kind of love that doesn't fade, or become routine, or turn into resentment, the kind of love that makes every day feel like a gift. I would have given you that. I wanted to give you that, but you chose differently. I have to accept that, but I can't stop writing to you. These letters are the only way I can still feel connected to you, even if you never read them, even if you throw them away, unopened. I need to write them, so I'll keep writing, every week, for as long as it takes, for as long as I'm still breathing. Yours always, James. The letters continued. 1961, 1962, 1963. He wrote about his life, his work at the shipyard, the loneliness of his apartment. He wrote about seeing children in the park and wondering if our daughter, that's how he phrased it, our daughter looked like them. He wrote about hearing love songs on the radio and remembering dancing with my mother at some church social when they were teenagers. By 1965, 5 years after my mother's wedding, the letters had taken on a different quality, less desperate, more melancholic. He'd accepted that she wasn't going to respond, but he kept writing anyway. My dearest Margaret, it's been 5 years since you married him. 5 years since I've seen your face. I still write to you every week, even though you never answer. Maybe you hate me. Maybe you've moved on completely. Maybe you're happy with Thomas Walsh. I hope you are, Margaret, even if it's not with me. I hope you found happiness. I hope your life turned out well. I hope your daughter is healthy and smart and beautiful, like her mother. I imagine her sometimes. She'd be 5 years old now, probably starting school, learning to read, making friends. Does she look like you? Does she have your laugh? Your father told me once, before he threw me out of your life, that I would never amount to anything, that I was trash from the wrong side of town, and I'd always be trash. Maybe he was right. I'm 30 years old, and I'm still working the same job at the shipyard. I haven't risen through the ranks like I thought I would. I haven't made anything of myself. I'm just surviving, working, coming home, eating alone, sleeping, and starting over the next day. It's a small life, a lonely life, but it's the life I have, and I fill it with these letters to you, with memories of you, with the ghost of what we could have been. Is that pathetic? Probably, but I can't seem to stop. If you ever want to talk to me, Margaret, just write back, even just once, even just a single sentence, to let me know you're okay. That's all I need, just to know you're okay. Yours always, James. I had to stop reading. My vision was blurred with tears. This man, this James Morrison, had loved my mother so completely, so absolutely, that he'd spent 5 years writing to her every week without receiving a single response. And he planned to continue. I wiped my eyes and opened more letters. 1968. 1973. The tone became even more resigned. He wrote like someone performing a ritual, something he did, because he didn't know how to stop. He still started each letter, "My dearest Margaret," and signed it "Yours always, James." But the content changed. He stopped asking her to respond. He stopped hoping for anything. He just wrote, "My dearest Margaret, I saw a woman on the street today who looked like you from behind. Same dark hair, same way of walking, same posture." My heart stopped. I actually ran to catch up with her, ready to call your name. But when she turned around, it wasn't you. Of course it wasn't you. You're in Pittsburgh with your husband and your daughter. You're living your life. You haven't thought about me in years, but I thought about you. I think about you every day. Is that healthy? Probably not. My coworkers tell me I should date, find someone, settle down. I'm 38 years old. Most men my age are married with children by now, but I can't seem to move forward. How do you move forward when part of you is still standing at a train station in 1960, waiting for someone who never came? I'll keep writing anyway. It's become a habit now. Every Sunday evening, I sit down with paper and pen and write to you. I tell you about my week. I tell you what I've been thinking about. I tell you that I still love you, even though you'll never read these words. I need to say them. Yours always, James. By 1978, 18 years after my mother's wedding, the letters had become almost meditative. James wrote about memory, about time, about love and loss. He wrote like someone who'd made peace with his loneliness, but couldn't quite let go of it. My dearest Margaret, I'm 45 years old today. I spent the evening alone. As usual, I made myself dinner. Nothing special, just spaghetti and sauce from a jar, and I listened to the radio. They played "The Way You Look Tonight," and I thought of you. I always think of you when I hear that song. Do you remember the night we danced to? It was at Mary Sullivan's wedding reception. We were both 18. You wore a blue dress that matched your eyes. We danced in the corner of the parish hall, and you rested your head on my shoulder. And for those 3 minutes, the entire world consisted of just you and me. And that song. I've never been that happy before, or since. That's what I hold on to, Margaret. Moments like that. They're all I have. I know I should let you go. I know I should move on with my life, find someone else, build something new. But how do you let go of the person who made you feel most alive? How do you move on when moving on means accepting that the best part of your life is over? I can't do it, so I keep writing these letters. I keep remembering. I keep loving you, even though it's pointless, even though you'll never love me back, even though you probably forgot I existed years ago. This is my life now, and I've accepted it. Yours always, James. Then came night. I picked up a letter dated February 1980 and read it, expecting more of the same melancholy reflection. But this letter was different. My dearest Margaret, I need to tell you something. I met someone. Her name is Diane Fletcher. She's 40 years old, never been married. She works as a librarian at the public library downtown. We met when I went to return some books last month. We started talking. She's kind. She's intelligent. She's lonely, like me. We've been seeing each other for a few weeks now. Nothing serious yet, just coffee, conversation, walks in the park. But there's potential there. A possibility of something. I told her about you. I know that it's probably strange for a new relationship, but I couldn't not tell her. She asked me if I'd ever been in love before, and I couldn't lie. I told her everything. About you, about us, about how it ended, about these letters I've been writing for 20 years. She listened without judgment, and then she said something that struck me. You're not writing these letters to her anymore. You're writing them to the ghost of who she was. The real woman moved on 20 years ago. She's right. Of course she's right. The Margaret I'm writing to, the 19-year-old girl who loved me, who promised to run away with me, who was going to build a life with me. That person doesn't exist anymore. You're 50 years old now. You've been married to Thomas Walsh for 23 years. You've raised your daughter. You've built a life that has nothing to do with me. The woman I'm writing to is just a memory, a fantasy, a ghost, and I can't spend the rest of my life in love with a ghost. So I'm going to try. Margaret, I'm going to try to build something with Diane. I'm going to try to move forward. I'm going to try to let you go. But I needed to write this letter first. I needed to tell you, even though you'll never read it, that I'm finally ready to say goodbye. Not because I stopped loving you, but because loving you was killing me. Yours always, James. There was only one more letter after that. March 1980. My dearest Margaret, this is my last letter. I'm writing to say goodbye. I've written to you every week for 20 years. I've sent you 208 letters. You never answered once. Not a single word in 20 years. I have to accept what that means. It means you moved on. It means you're happy with your life. It means you don't want to hear from me. I've been selfish, Margaret. I've been holding on to something that was never really there. I've been writing to a fantasy, not a real person. It's time to stop. I'm going to marry Diane. She knows about you. She knows I'll never love her the way I loved you. And she says that's okay. She says half of me is better than none of anyone else. She's too kind to me, too understanding. I don't deserve her, but I'm going to try to make her happy anyway. I want you to know something though. Even though this is goodbye, even though I'm moving on, even though I'm going to build a life with someone else, you were the love of my life. You were the person who made me understand what it means to really love someone. And if there's an afterlife, if there's a heaven, if there's any kind of existence after this one, I'll be waiting for you there. Not to claim you, or to take you away from whatever life you've built, just to see you one more time, just to tell you face to face what I've been saying in these letters for 20 years, that I loved you, that I never stopped loving you, that you were everything. Thank you for the memories, Mark. Even though things didn't work out the way I'd hoped, even though I spent 20 years writing to someone who never wrote back, even though loving you broke my heart, I don't regret it. Loving you was the most real thing I ever did. Goodbye, my dearest Margaret. I hope you had a beautiful life. I hope you found happiness. I hope you never regretted your choices. Yours always, one last time, James. I sat on the floor of that demolished bedroom for over 3 hours, reading every single letter. 208 letters spanning 20 years. A one-sided love story, written in fading ink on yellowed paper. My mother never knew. She never received a single one of these letters. She lived her entire life thinking James Morrison had abandoned her. When she got pregnant, she married my father believing she had no other choice. She raised me in a house filled with sadness and regret, never knowing that the man she'd loved had tried desperately to reach her for 2 decades. Someone had intercepted these letters. Someone had taken them from the mailbox before my mother could see them. Someone had hidden them in the walls of this house where she would never find them. And I knew who that someone was. Mike knocked on the door gently. Mrs. Walsh, it's getting late. Do you need anything? No, I said, my voice hoarse from crying. I'm okay. Thank you for giving me space. Do you want us to continue with the renovation? I looked at the exposed wall studs, at the place where these letters had been hidden for over 40 years. Yes, continue. Finish the work. What do you want us to do with that? He gestured to the letters spread around me on the floor. I'm taking them home. All of them. I gathered the letters carefully, wrapped them back in the oilcloth, and carried them to my car. When I got home, Robert was in the living room watching television. He looked up as I walked in, and his expression changed immediately. Catherine, what happened? You look like you've seen a ghost. I found something in the house, in the walls of my mother's bedroom. What? I sat down next to him and pulled out the letters. These. He picked up one of the envelopes, examined the address and postmark. Letters to your mother. From 1960 to 1980. From a man named James Morrison. 208 letters over 20 years. All hidden in the walls, all unopened. Robert's eyes widened. Your mother never saw these. She had no idea they existed. Who hid them? My father. It had to be my father. I told Robert everything I'd read in the letters, about James and my mother being in love, about her getting pregnant, about her parents forcing her to marry my father instead, about James writing to her every week for 20 years, not knowing that my father was intercepting every letter and hiding them where she would never find them. Robert was quiet for a long time after I finished. Then he said, My God, Catherine, your father, he stole your mother's entire life. I need to find out if it's true. I need proof. What kind of proof? My father kept a diary. I remember seeing it years ago when we were cleaning out the house after he died. I kept it with his other personal effects in storage. If he hid these letters, he might have written about it. We went to the storage unit that night. In the back, behind boxes of Christmas decorations and old furniture, I found the cartons containing my father's things. His reading glasses, his wallet, his watch, and there, wrapped in newspaper, was his diary. It was a simple leather-bound journal, the kind you could buy at any drugstore. The pages were yellowed, the binding cracked. My father's neat, careful handwriting filled every page. I flipped through it, looking for entries from, and there it was, dated June 23, 1960, the day after his wedding to my mother. I married Margaret O'Brien yesterday. He'd written, she's carrying another man's child, but the baby will have my name. I'll raise it as my own. Her parents are grateful. The neighborhood doesn't have to know the truth. Margaret is beautiful, but she doesn't love me, not yet. Maybe someday she will. I kept reading. July 1960. Another letter came today from Philadelphia. From him, James Morrison. Margaret doesn't know. I intercepted it before she could see it. I hid it in the walls behind the bedroom plaster. I'll do the same with any others that come. I know what people would say. That I'm controlling, that I'm stealing her mail, that I have no right. But they don't understand. He abandoned her, he got her pregnant, and then he left her here to face the consequences alone. Her parents were going to disown her. The church was going to cast her out. She would have been ruined. I saved her. I married her. I gave the baby my name. I gave Margaret respectability. If she gets his letters now, she might leave me. She might go to him. And then what? He'd marry her out of obligation. She'd be the woman who trapped him with a pregnancy. He'd resent her. He'd resent the child. No, this way is better. This way she can build a life with me. This way she can have stability and security. She'll get over him. Eventually, she'll learn to love me, and he'll stop writing when he realizes she's not going to respond. August 1960. Another letter, another week. He's persistent, I'll give him that. But it doesn't matter. Margaret will never see these letters. I'm protecting her from false hope, from a man who would only disappoint her in the end. She's mine now. The sooner she accepts that, the better. The entries continued throughout 1960, each time noting that another letter had arrived and been hit. By 1961, my father's tone had changed slightly. The letters keep coming, he wrote in January 1961. Every single week, like clockwork. I have to admit, Part of me respects his dedication, but I still can't let Margaret see them. She's started to settle into our marriage. She's not crying as much anymore. She takes care of the baby. Catherine is 6 months old now, and looks just like her. Dark hair, blue eyes, Margaret's eyes, not mine. Sometimes when I look at Catherine, I see him, the man she really loved, the man whose child she's raising with my name. But I push those thoughts away. Catherine is my daughter now, legally, and in every way that matters, and Margaret is my wife. The letters are a threat to the life we're building, so I continue hiding them. I've created a space between the bedroom wall stuff. I slide each letter in there and plaster over it. Margaret will never find them. No one will ever find them. I kept reading through the years. 1965. 5 years of letters. He's written to her every week for 5 years. That's over 200. The wall space is getting full. I've had to expand the hiding spot. Margaret asked me why I was doing repairs in the bedroom. I told her the plaster was cracking. She believed me. She always believes me. Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing the right thing. Margaret seems content enough. She's a good mother. She keeps the house clean. She cooks my meals. She fulfills her wifely duties without complaint. But there's a sadness in her that never quite goes away. I see it when she thinks I'm not looking, when she stares out the window, when she listens to her old records. She's mourning something, or someone. Maybe if she got his letters, she'd have closure. Maybe she'd stop looking so sad all the time. But I can't risk it, because maybe she'd also realize she married the wrong man. 1970. 10 years. He's still writing. I can't believe it. 10 years of unreturned letters, and he hasn't given up. Who does that? Who writes to someone for a decade without getting a single response? Part of me admires him. Part of me hates him. He represents everything I'm not. Passionate, romantic, persistent, the kind of man women dream about. I'm just the practical choice, the safe option. The man who pays the bills and fixes the sink and shows up for dinner every night at 6 o'clock. Margaret respects me. Maybe she even cares about me in her way, but she doesn't love me. Not the way she loved him. I see it every time she touches that photograph on her nightstand. The young man in the Navy uniform. I know it's him. I've never asked her about it, and she's never volunteered the information. We have an unspoken agreement to never talk about James Morrison, but his ghost lives in our house anyway. Invisible but always present. These letters I hide are proof of that ghost, proof that her first love never forgot her, never stopped wanting her. If she knew, everything would fall apart. So I keep hiding them, for her sake, for my sake, for our daughter's sake. 15 years of marriage, 15 years of letters. He writes to her at her parents' old address. They died 5 years ago, but he doesn't know that. The mail still comes to that house. The new owners forward it to me. They think I'm being helpful, intercepting mail for my wife. They don't know I'm hiding it. Catherine is 18 now. She's going to college next year. She's smart, ambitious, everything I could have wanted in a daughter, even if she's not mine by blood. Sometimes I look at her and wonder what James Morrison would think if he knew he had a daughter. Would he have tried harder to reach Margaret if he'd known? Would he have shown up at our door demanding to see his child? Maybe it's better that he doesn't know. Better for everyone. Margaret has seemed happier lately, more settled, less sad. Maybe she's finally forgetting him. Maybe time is doing what I always hoped it would do, erasing him from her heart. But the letters keep coming, like clockwork, and I keep hiding them. It's become almost automatic now. Every week I check the mail. Every week I find his letter. Every week I tuck it into the walls. It's a secret ritual that only I know about. 1980, the letters stopped. After 20 years of weekly letters, they just stopped. It's been 3 weeks now with nothing. I don't know what it means. Maybe he died. Maybe he got married. Maybe he finally gave up. Whatever the reason, I feel strange about it. Relief, certainly. No more letters to hide. No more evidence of a life Margaret could have had. But also something else. Something I can't quite name. For 20 years, those letters were proof that someone loved her more than I ever could. They were a weekly reminder that I was second choice. And now they're gone. I should be happy, but instead I feel empty. Margaret seems the same as always. She doesn't know the letters stopped because she never knew they existed. Life goes on as it always has. I go to work. She keeps the house. We eat dinner together. We watch television. We go to bed. We're old now. I'm 53. She's 50. Catherine has her own life. We're just two people who've spent 23 years together, bound by history and habit, but not by love, not real love. I know that now. I've always known it, but I convinced myself that stability and security were enough, that providing for her was a kind of love, that protecting her, even from herself, was what a good husband did. Was I wrong? I don't know. I can't think about it too much or I'll go crazy. The letters are hidden in the wall. They'll stay there forever. No one will ever find them. When I die, when Margaret dies, when this house is sold or torn down, someone might discover them, but by then it won't matter. We'll all be gone. The truth will die with us, and maybe that's for the best. That was the last entry about the letters. My father continued writing in his diary for years, mundane entries about work, about his health, about his retirement, about growing old, but he never mentioned James Morrison or the hidden letters again. I closed the diary and looked at Robert. He knew exactly what he was doing. For 20 years, he deliberately intercepted and hid those letters. He knew my mother would want to read them. He knew she still loved James, and he hid them anyway. What are you going to do? Robert asked. I need to find James Morrison. I need to know what happened to him. I hired a private investigator the next day. Her name was Linda Chen, and she specialized in finding people. I gave her all the information I had. James Morrison, last known address in Philadelphia, worked at the naval shipyard, wrote the last letter in March 19. She called me back 3 days later. Mrs. Walsh, I found him, or rather I found records of him. James Morrison died 2 months ago at the age of 87. Heart failure. He was living in a nursing home in Philadelphia. 2 months ago. Just 2 months before I found the letters. If I'd discovered them earlier, he might still have been alive. I could have talked to him. I could have told him the truth, that my mother never received his letters, that she never knew he'd tried to reach her for 20 years. There's more, Linda said. He was married to a woman named Diane Morrison. She's still alive. I have her contact information if you want. I did want it. I needed to talk to someone who'd known James, someone who could tell me about the man who'd loved my mother for his entire life. I called Diane Morrison that afternoon. She answered on the third ring, her voice elderly but clear. Mrs. Morrison, my name is Catherine Wall. My mother was Margaret O'Brien. I believe your husband knew her. There was a long, heavy silence. Then I've been waiting for this call for 43 years. We agreed to meet in person. I drove to Philadelphia the next day. Diane lived in a small apartment in a retirement community. She was 82 years old, small and thin, with silver hair and sharp blue eyes that studied me carefully when she opened the door. You look like him, she said immediately. Same eyes, same chin. You're his daughter, aren't you? I nodded, unable to speak. Come in, sit down. I have things to show you. Her apartment was neat, filled with photographs and mementos. She led me to the dining room table where a cardboard box sat waiting. He told me about your mother on our second date, Diane began, sitting across from me. It was nice. We met at the library where I worked. He came in regularly, always polite, always checking out books about ships and the sea. One day we started talking. He asked me to coffee, then to dinner, and on that second dinner, he told me everything. Everything. About Margaret, about getting her pregnant, about her parents separating them, about her marrying Thomas Walsh, about writing to her every week for 20 years, without receiving a single response. He said he needed me to know that he would never love me the way he loved her. He said if I couldn't accept being second place in his heart, we shouldn't continue seeing each other. And you accepted that? Diane smiled sadly. I was 40 years old. I'd never been married. I'd spent my whole life waiting for the right person, and I'd started to think he didn't exist. James was honest with me, painfully honest. He told me he was broken, that Margaret had broken him, but that he wanted to try to build something real with someone new. He asked if I could love a man who would always carry another woman in his heart. What did you say? I said yes, because I'd rather have part of him than none of anyone else, and because I could see that he was a good man, a man capable of extraordinary love, even if that love was directed at someone who never responded to it. Did you have a good marriage? We had a real marriage. He tried very hard to be present with me, to build a life with me. We traveled, we read books together, we had long conversations about everything under the sun. He was kind to me, affectionate, attentive, but there was always a part of him that was elsewhere, with her, with the memory of her. Diane pushed the cardboard box toward me. He made me promise something before he died, 2 months ago, in the nursing home, when he knew the end was coming. He said if anyone ever came looking for information about Margaret O'Brien, I should give them this box. I opened it slowly. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. My mother as a young woman, maybe 17 or 18 years old, laughing, vibrant, beautiful. Her hair was dark and long, her eyes bright with life. She looked nothing like the sad, wistful woman I'd known growing up. In every photograph, her arms were around a tall young man with dark hair and kind eyes. James Morrison. They looked happy, radiantly happy, the kind of happiness that's impossible to fake, that shines through even in black and white photographs, taken 70 years ago. They were childhood sweethearts, Diane explained. They grew up next door to each other in Pittsburgh, same neighborhood, same church, same schools. They started dating when they were 16. Everyone thought they'd get married eventually. What happened? Margaret's parents didn't approve. The O'Briens were middle class, respectable. James's family was working class, poor. His father was a drunk who couldn't hold a job. His mother took in laundry to make ends meet. Margaret's father, Patrick O'Brien, thought James would never amount to anything. He forbade Margaret from seeing him, but they kept seeing each other anyway. In secret, yes, they'd meet after school, at the library, at friends' houses. They were young and in love, and thought they could overcome anything. When James turned 18, he enlisted in the Navy. He thought if he served his country, if he learned a trade, if he made something of himself, Patrick O'Brien would finally accept him. He went through basic training, got stationed at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard for his apprenticeship. He and Margaret wrote to each other constantly. He was planning to come back for her after his first year of service. They were going to get married, but she got pregnant. Diane nodded. They'd spent a weekend together before he left for Philadelphia, Atlantic City. They got a motel room, just the two of them. They were young and reckless, and in love. A month later, Margaret realized she was pregnant. What did she do? She wrote to James immediately. She was terrified, but she was also hopeful. They loved each other. They were going to get married anyway. The baby would just speed up their plan. She sent the letter to his base in Philadelphia. Did he get it? No, her mother intercepted it. Catherine O'Brien was going through Margaret's things, and found the letter before Margaret could mail it. She read it, told her husband, and they decided what to do. They told Margaret that they'd inform James about the pregnancy, and that he wanted nothing to do with her, or the baby. They said he'd made it clear he wasn't ready for marriage, or fatherhood. They lied, completely. James had no idea Margaret was pregnant. Meanwhile, Margaret was devastated. She thought the man she loved had abandoned her. Her parents moved quickly. They found Thomas Walsh, a 30-year-old bachelor, steady job at the steel mill, devout Catholic, willing to marry a pregnant woman, and claim the child as his own. They arranged the whole thing in 3 weeks. And James? He found out through a mutual friend. By then Margaret was already married. He tried to go to her, to talk to her, to understand why she'd married someone else so quickly. But Patrick O'Brien met him at the door with a shotgun, told him if he ever came near Margaret again, he'd kill him, told him Margaret had made her choice, and he needed to accept it. So he started writing letters. Every week for 20 years, he wrote to her parents' address, because he didn't know where she and Thomas lived. He poured his heart out in those letters, asked her to explain, begged her to reconsider, eventually, just told her about his life, and how much he still loved her. He thought she was choosing not to respond. He thought she'd read every letter, and decided he wasn't worth answering. It broke him, but he kept writing anyway. Did he ever try to see her in person? Once. In 1970, 10 years after the wedding, he drove to Pittsburgh, found her parents' old house. The neighbor told him the O'Briens had died, and Margaret had moved. But the neighbor didn't know where. James spent 3 days driving around Pittsburgh, checking phone books, asking at churches. He never found her. After that, he gave up trying to see her in person. The letters were all he had left. Why did he stop writing and The doctors told him he needed to reduce stress, let go of whatever was weighing on him. I told him he needed to stop torturing himself with those letters, that he was writing to a fantasy, not a real person, that the Margaret he loved was gone, replaced by a woman who'd built a life without him. He finally agreed. Writing that last letter was the hardest thing he ever did. He cried for hours afterward. Did he ever stop loving her? Diane was quiet for a long moment. No, he tried. He tried to love me fully. He tried to be present in our marriage, and in many ways he succeeded. We had good years together, but Margaret was always there, like a ghost. He kept her photograph on his desk, until the day he died. She pulled a framed photograph from the box. It showed my mother at maybe 19 years old, sitting on a bench by a river, smiling at the camera. She looked young and hopeful, and utterly beautiful. He looked at this every day for 67 years. Diane said softly. He'd touch the frame sometimes when he thought I wasn't watching, and I'd pretend not to notice, because what good would it have done to say anything? I knew what I was getting into when I married him. I knew I'd always be second, and I made peace with that, because having part of James Morrison was still more than most women ever get. Did he ever know about me? That he had a daughter? He suspected. He heard through friends that Margaret had a baby girl born in December 1957. He did the math. He knew the timing was right, but he never knew for sure. And he never tried to contact you because he didn't want to disrupt your life. He said if you were being raised as Thomas Walsh's daughter, if you had a stable home and a father figure, it would be selfish of him to insert himself. He said the kindest thing he could do was stay away. Tears were streaming down my face. My whole life, I thought my father, Thomas, was cold and distant, because that's just how he was. But now I understand. He was raising another man's child. He was married to a woman who loved someone else. Every time he looked at me, he saw James. Every time he looked at my mother, he knew she was thinking about someone else. And every time your mother looked at you, Diane said gently, she saw the man she lost. I spent 3 hours with Diane, going through the photographs, listening to stories about James and my mother's early relationship, stories of ice cream dates and walks by the river, stories of sneaking out to meet each other, stories of a love so pure and hopeful that it was almost painful to hear about. When I finally left, Diane gave me the box of photographs. He'd want you to have these. You're his daughter, his only child. He never got to meet you, never got to know you, but he thought about you every single day of his life. He wondered what you looked like, what you were like, whether you were happy. Now you know the truth. Now you know he never abandoned your mother. He never stopped fighting for her. It was the world that kept them apart. I drove home in a daze. That night, I sat Robert down and told him everything Diane had shared. So what now? He asked. What are you going to do with all this information? I don't know. My mother's dead. James is dead. My father's dead. Everyone involved in this story is gone. The only person left is me, carrying the weight of a tragedy that happened before I was born. Are you going to tell anyone? Your daughter? Other family members? I thought about that. My daughter Sarah was 45 years old, living in California with her own family. Did she need to know that her grandfather wasn't really her grandfather? That her grandmother had lived a life of quiet desperation? That the foundation of our family was built on lies and intercepted letters? I don't know, I said honestly. What good would it do? Everyone's gone. The truth can't heal anyone now. But I couldn't let it go. I couldn't just put the letters back in a box and pretend I'd never found them. So I made a decision. I went to my mother's grave. It was a cold afternoon in November, the sky gray and heavy with the promise of rain. My mother was buried next to my father in a Catholic cemetery on the outskirts of Pittsburgh. Their headstones sat side by side. Thomas Michael Walsh, 1920, devoted husband and loving wife. The stones read, "Together forever." But it was a lie. They weren't devoted. They weren't in love. They were two people trapped in a marriage neither of them chose, living out their lives in quiet resignation. I brought one of James's letters with me, the last one dated March 9th. I sat on the cold ground in front of my mother's headstone and read it aloud. My dearest Margaret, this is my last letter. I'm writing to say goodbye. I've written to you every week for 20 years. I've sent you 208 letters. You never answered once. But I want you to know, you were the love of my life. You were the person who made me understand what it means to really love someone. Thank you for the memories. I hope you had a beautiful life. Yours always. One last time, Jane. I folded the letter carefully and placed it on her grave, weighting it down with a small stone so the wind wouldn't take it. You were loved, Mom, I whispered. You were loved so much. James Morrison never forgot you. He never stopped loving you. I'm so sorry you never knew. I'm so sorry Dad took that from you. I'm so sorry you spent your whole life thinking James abandoned you when he was trying to reach you every single week for 20 years. The wind picked up, rustling the trees around the cemetery. For a moment, I imagined it was her, responding, telling me she knew now, telling me that wherever she was, whatever came after this life, she and James had finally found each other again. But that was just fantasy, just the desperate hope of a daughter who wanted to believe her mother's story had a happy ending, even if that ending came after death. The truth was simpler and sadder. My mother lived 89 years, never knowing she was loved. James lived 87 years, loving someone who never wrote back. And my father lived 92 years, knowing he'd stolen something precious and irreplaceable. 3 lives, shaped by choices made in 3 lives, forever changed by intercepted letters and hidden truth. I'm 68 years old. My father has been dead for 5 years. My mother has been dead for 3. James has been dead for 2 months. And I just found out that everything I believed about my family was built on a lie. My father wasn't a good man who saved my mother from scandal. He was a controlling man who saw an opportunity and took it. He married a pregnant woman who loved someone else. He intercepted her mail for 20 years. He hid 208 letters in the walls. He made sure she never knew that James had tried to reach her. And my mother lived her whole life, mourning a man she thought had abandoned her, never knowing he had loved her enough to write to her every week for 20 years, never knowing he'd kept her photograph for 67 years, never knowing he'd thought about her every single day until he died. I don't know how to process this. Part of me is angry at my father for what he did. Part of me understands he was a product of his time, a 1950s man who believed he knew what was best for everyone. Part of me is heartbroken for my mother, for the life she could have had. Part of me is heartbroken for James, who spent 2 decades shouting into a void. And part of me is angry at myself for never asking more questions, for never pushing when my mother looked sad, for accepting the surface story without digging deep, for not noticing the photograph on her nightstand was more than just an old friend. I have those 208 letters now. I've read every one multiple times. They're beautiful and heartbreaking, and proof of a love that refused to die, even when it had every reason to. I showed them to my daughter Sarah. I called her and told her to visit. When she arrived, I sat her down and told her everything about the letters, about James Morrison, about the lies our family was built on. She was quiet for a long time after I finished. Then she said, "So Grandpa Thomas wasn't really my grandfather." "Biologically, no. James Morrison was your biological grandfather, but Thomas raised me. He gave me his name. He provided for me in every way that matters legally and socially. He was my father, but not in your heart." I thought about that. I don't know. I loved him because he was my father, but there was always distance between us, always coldness. I thought it was just his personality. Now I understand it was something more complicated. He was raising another man's child, living with a woman who loved another man. That would make anyone cold. "Do you forgive him?" Sarah asked. "For hiding the letters?" "I don't know. I want to say no. What he did was wrong. He stole my mother's mail. He stole her choices. He let her believe for 60 years that James had abandoned her. That's unforgivable. But I also understand why he did it. In his mind, he was protecting her, protecting their marriage, protecting the life they'd built. He believed, genuinely believed, that knowing about the letters would only hurt her, that James was a fantasy she needed to let go of. Was he right? I'll never know. Maybe she would have been happier with James. Maybe their relationship would have fallen apart within a year. Maybe she would have regretted leaving Thomas and me behind. There's no way to know. Sarah picked up one of the letters, read it slowly. "These are so beautiful, so sad. He really loved her. He loved her more than most people are ever loved. What are you going to do with them?" That was the question I'd been struggling with for weeks. What do you do with evidence of a love story that never got to finish? Evidence of lies and intercepted mail and stolen choices. "I'm going to keep them," I said finally. "They're proof that my mother was cherished, that she mattered to someone in a profound way, even if she never knew it, even if she spent her whole life thinking she wasn't loved. She was, deeply and truly and completely. I want to remember that. I want her to be remembered that way." "Are you going to try to find James's grave? Visit him?" I had already done that. Before Sarah arrived, I'd driven to Philadelphia and found the cemetery where James was buried. It was a small Catholic cemetery, simple headstones arranged in neat rows. James Morrison, 1938, 20. I'd stood there for a long time, looking at that headstone, thinking about the man buried beneath it. A man I'd never met, a man who was my biological father, but who never got to be my father in any real sense. A man who spent his entire life loving someone who never wrote back. I visited his grave. I told Sarah. I brought flowers, white roses. I told him the truth, that my mother never received his letters, that she never knew he'd tried to reach her, that she died thinking he'd abandoned her. I told him I was sorry. Sorry that he spent 20 years writing into a void. Sorry that he never got to meet me. Sorry that he and my mother never got their happy ending. "Do you think he would have wanted to know you?" Diane said he thought about me every day, wondered what I was like, wondered if I was happy. So yes, I think he would have wanted to know me, and I wish I'd had the chance to know him, to thank him for loving my mother so completely, to tell him that his letters were the most beautiful thing I've ever read. The renovation of my childhood home was completed last month. The contractors turned that small, sad house into something bright and open. New floors, new kitchen, new bathrooms. The bedroom where the letters were hidden is now a spacious master suite, all traces of the hiding spot gone. I put the house on the market. It sold within a week. A young couple with a baby bought it. They were so excited about starting their life there, about making new memories in that space. I didn't tell them about the letters. I didn't tell them that the walls had held secrets for 40 years. I just smiled and wished them happiness. I hope they have a better love story than my parents did. I hope their marriage is built on honesty and choice and mutual love. I hope they never have to wonder what might have been. As for me, I'm still processing everything, still trying to understand what it means that my entire family history was built on intercepted letters and hidden truths, still trying to decide how I feel about Thomas Walsh, the man who raised me, but who stole my mother's happiness. Some days I'm angry, furious at what he did. Other days I'm sad, sad for everyone involved, for my mother, for James, even for Thomas himself, trapped in a loveless marriage of his own making. But mostly I'm just heartbroken that my mother never knew she was loved, that James spent 67 years loving a woman who never wrote back, that 3 people's lives were shaped by secrets and lies and stolen mail. I've started writing my own letters, not to send to anyone, just to write down my thoughts, my feelings, my attempt to make sense of this tragedy. Maybe someday my daughter or grandchildren will read them. Maybe they'll understand that love is complicated, that people make mistakes, that sometimes the cruelest thing you can do is hide the truth for someone's own good. I keep James's photograph on my dresser now, the one of my mother at 19, sitting by the river, smiling at the camera. I look at it every day and try to imagine what her life could have been, what my life could have been if James Morrison had been my father instead of Thomas Walsh. Would I have been happier? Would she have been happy? I'll never know. All I know is that I found 208 letters in the walls of my mother's house, 208 pieces of a love story that never got to finish, 208 whispers of a man's heart sent into the void, and my mother never heard a single one. If you've ever hidden something from someone for their own good, I want you to think about this story. Think about what you're really doing. Are you protecting them? Or are you controlling them? Are you saving them from pain? Or are you stealing their choice? My father thought he was doing the right thing. Maybe he even believed it until the day he died. But he was wrong. He should have given my mother those letters. He should have let her decide. Because a choice made for you is not really a choice at all. It's just another form of control. And control, no matter how well-intentioned, is never love. God bless you all. And if you ever find old letters hidden in walls, read them, share them, let the truth come out, no matter how painful, because the truth, even painful truth, is better than a lifetime of beautiful lies.